And welcome to this week's roll of 24 for the week of 4 May through 10 May 2026. So, once again, in this week's roll of 24, I was a little eclectic with a variety of different photographs. Some of the photographs I was working on a slower shutter speed this week with various cameras and lenses throughout the week. For example, I did a sunset over at Victory Ranch. I did a flag at night. Very interesting. Some of the other things, I was capturing some flowers. This one is not in a slow shutter speed, but other flowers this week were. Also, I did some landscape, not too many, out there in west central Texas. And I had some fun at night doing a slow shutter speed of a light that we have in the pool that glows, and I thought it was pretty interesting, so I took some pictures of that. Also, Charlie and I went out and did some slow motion out there, street photography out in front of our neighborhood. Charlie and I went out to Chalk Falls waterfall and walked upstream and captured some pictures of some ferns and some water coming out of a cave entrance. This is a picture showing me some of the challenges that I face when photographing with Charlie out there. He'll fall right between me and the subject. And I only had one opportunity for an Astro, and I've only had one opportunity for Astro in about the last 3 or 4 weeks, either because of the full moon or because of dense cloud cover. So for this week, the week roll of 24 for the week of 4 to 10 May 2026, I set a challenge out for what's called a rear curtain flash. And I had this great idea, and we'll see eventually, where I would go out and capture a flower in motion with the flash on a long shutter speed and to see basically what kind of ghosting it would create. Well, my first challenge for the week was to find a place where there were some flowers. Drove around town, and a lot of the fields that had flowers and stuff are plowed over. And here is a golden crown beard, very interesting flower. And so I went to this field and looked around to see if I could come back later that night. So after walking around that field and capturing that golden crown beard, not really wasting time, but just looking around, and I saw this scene of the Texas countryside. And rarely do I get a valley view like this where it's going down and then back uphill. And so got around to setting up the camera. I was using the Canon EOS R5, and I had a 200 to 800 attached. Not the ideal camera and lens combo for landscape, but I set about setting it up, and you can see this is at 800 millimeters and 1/6 of a speed at f9 at ISO 100. And as some people have said, if the skies are blue, then focus in with a zoom lens and eliminate the sky and focus on what's in front of you, and that I did. So after capturing that landscape scene, Charlie and I loaded back up in the car, and we were perusing the western central part of Texas, trying to find fields of flowers that were accessible to the public, because the area is huge and ranching and everything else. So a lot of things are closed off. This right here, this Texas purple thistle, it was outside of an entrance to a small horse arena corral where people can go practice. They did have some small bleachers there. And once again, this was just south of Kempner, Texas. And because it was on the outside of the gate, Charlie and I unloaded our gear and set about. Here I have the RF100 f2.8 macro lens attached to see how well I capture this. And so still struggling with the macro. And while I still have the macro lens on, I did back up some, and I changed it from its smallest setting to the medium, which is 0.28 millimeters, 2.8 meters away from the subject. And I backed this up, and because I just liked the little partner down there on the right hand side, I thought it just looked really cute and everything. So set about setting this up, and once again, this is on May 4th at getting close to 12:30 p.m. So the sun was right above us, kind of bright. So macro work, probably pretty good idea. That way, I didn't use a flash or anything. I did have it at 1/500, and the auto ISO set it at 1250. And the reason why it was so high was because the wind was blowing pretty good, nice gentle breeze. But I did set it at f14 to try and get as much of it into focus as possible. And so I finally did find some flowers, and I found this one, and I was getting set up. I was getting out my flash and getting everything set up, trying to get my flash settings correct. And this is a Dakota Vernon. It's in the next picture. And so I was just setting everything up, just had picked up the flash, and I looked down, and there's Charlie. He'd been running around everywhere out in this field, and he decided at the last minute, because I was in the shade, to come over and join me. And very gently, he positions himself. He didn't hit the camera at all, nor did he hit the subject this time, but he positioned himself right there in between what I wanted to shoot with the camera. And so I'm like, sometimes this is stressful trying to get out there and do photography, especially with Charlie around. So this is a behind the scene of the setup. So you can see the flower. I have this in, where did I record this at? 120 frames a second, so it's slow motion. So you can see the flower moving, and this actually captures the flash going off. And soon we'll see the results of what this flower looks like when it's slowly moving in the breeze with this back curtain flash going. But before we see the results of what that back curtain flash looks like, so I was taking the recording of the behind the scenes, and while the flash was still going, because I had it set on an interval timer to catch all the different motions, I moved the camera over, and you can see the flash going off of Charlie's head there. But there is Charlie deciding that, you know what, I really don't like this leash anymore. And he's trying to bite through it yet again. So this would be like the third or fourth time he's bitten through it. So it's almost time to go get a new one. But yeah, so he was just having a good old time there. So here are the results, and this is the Dakota Mock Vernon that I captured, and then there's the scientific name below the name up there in the upper left-hand corner. And like I said, I had the camera set at interval timer, and I was just left it there. I left it there for probably about 10 minutes, captured. I was capturing a frame every 15 seconds, so 5 frames a minute, 6 frames a minute, and no, 4 frames a minute. And then I went through and found this one, and this is not my pixie dust, so because pixie dust is gold, you'll see that in another video or photo shortly. So I called this one Fairy Dust, was the title of this image here. And it's just really interesting on how the wind blowing around leaves this after image inside the frame. So in that prior image, number 6, that was actually zoomed in some, and this is what the full frames look like. I'm using a 15 to 35, and this was another one of the test samples that I was doing. And this one's not as dramatic as the previous one where it's going left and right. This one's kind of just going around in a circle. But once again, this is Charlie had moved away from in front of the camera, had gone to play in the field again by himself, carrying his leash around, and then he decided to come back to see what I was doing. And you can see that he just positioned himself. So once again, this camera is on interval timer doing its own flashes, and Charlie just looked left, looked right, and sat down right between the lens of the camera and the subject that I was trying to capture doing this back curtain photography session. And here is another attempt at this back curtain flash photography. While I liked the other two pictures, I wanted to try something different for the background scene. And the sun was going down. We can see that this was done at 7:48 in the evening out here in this field out in western central Texas. And I ended up trying to blow on this, but the stem was too thick for just blowing on it. I just liked how this one ended up. I'm focused on the flower, and you can see it drops off real quick in the background. This is at f13. It's a half of a second exposure at 35 millimeters. And I just liked how the sun was setting. I kind of now wish I could have actually gotten lower so the flower would have been higher up in the scene. But we take what we can get when we get them. So once again, just an example. And here is the last image of this back curtain flash photography. This is a stiff green thread, then of course the scientific name, and I titled this image Pixie Dust. I actually had to ask Google or Siri, what is pixie dust, and they came back and said that it was gold. And so the other image that I titled Fairy Dust because it was purple, so it wouldn't work for the title of this image. And I just really liked how I was able to capture. I liked the background in this one with the three trees and then the ridge line further back. And you can see that this was done at 8:22 in the evening. I spent a lot of time out there in this field for about 3-4 hours capturing various pictures. I think I ended up taking maybe 600-700 pictures. Because like I said, I just left it on interval timer, spent 10-15 minutes walking around the field with Charlie, and then came back and checked the outcome. So if you notice in image 10 here, I'm now on May 6th. I was out there on May 4th, so evidently I didn't go out and do any picture taking on the 5th, probably because I was trying to figure out and edit those pictures from the 4th. There were quite a few of them, and trying to find the right one. A lot of deletes, a lot of blurs, and so I was out there. So this is at evening time. It's a little after 9 o'clock at night, and I'd gone to lock up the office, and I saw our new pool light in the pool, and it was slowly rotating, which was very picturesque. And so I poked my head inside, told lovely bride I'm going to go grab the camera and take some pictures. And I was using my new RF14 ultra wide on this. It's set at 1.4 is the f-stop. So I moved the little floaty thing into the center and give it a little nudge with one of our pool sweeps that we use to pick up the leaves, and it has regular rotating lights. And so I took quite a few pictures. Once again, I put this on interval timer so that I could move around and give the light a little nudge, get it back out there in the center because it kept on floating to the right over by the steps and getting stuck. And that blob you see down there on the left-hand side at the 11 o'clock position, that's actually our automatic pool cleaner guy that evidently his battery wore out, and he's just sitting there. So I had all of different colors. I had yellows, reds, orange, but I just really liked how the green and this blue set. And now I had this one at f9, and here the ISO is at 1600. I lightened it up a lot. The previous one, the ISO was 400. And so anyways, I just wanted to see more of the backyard to draw the eyes through the image from the circle back to the yard. So we are now on May 7th, and I noticed throughout the day the thick clouds, and they were actually lightening up some. So Charlie and I went over to this location into this subdivision called Victory Ranch that's being built and overlooks the Robert Gray Airfield. And I was anticipating some really nice sunset colors, which show up right here. And we spent about 2.5, 3 hours. We got out there, got set up, actually climbed some dirt mounds, which was good because that way I could just drop Charlie's leash and he wandered around. But I've got a couple of pictures here of the sunset from that evening. So as I just mentioned, so now it's 7:45, and we really had not seen, we being Charlie and I, had not seen the clouds peek out at all. And while we were walking up these mounds of dirt at the back of this new neighborhood, there was this plant here called a blanket flower. And so I set up the camera, one of the two cameras, and we just hemmed and hawed and waited for the sun to finally come out. And I got lucky because it did come out before it got too low on the horizon. You can see the shadows, though. They cast a pretty good shadow. But I just love these flowers and this big bush right out there. And I'm like, how come I can't grow something like this in my yard? Well, because it needs so much sunshine. This is one of those kind of plants that needs 12, 14 hours of sunshine throughout the day. But it sure was nice sitting there photographing this before the sun actually started to set. And so here is one of the first of three images. I captured these God beams coming out from this cloud as the sun was setting behind it. And this was the main purpose for going up there. And as you can see, it's now 8:16, so it's been 30 minutes since I took the pictures of the blanket flower bush. And the sun had finally started going down, finally behind these clouds. And there were a couple instances where the beam came out, but I was not standing at the camera. And to ensure that I was able to have a wide variety of different pictures to choose from, I did have this on exposure bracketing, and this is at 1/15 of a second, 35 millimeters, f11, ISO 100. And so I had 7 different pictures to choose from. I did not do bracketing. I did not combine them. So, like I just mentioned in the last frame, I created 7 images from each one exposure bracketing, but I did not combine them to create any HDRs. I just wanted to be able to automatically have the exposure adjusting between each one of the frames and capture them at one time. I think I took maybe 45, 50 series of this. About every 45 seconds, I would manually push the button. I had it on a 2-second timer. And so this one's at 8:19. So at 8:16, we had those God beams coming through, and now the sun's setting down and the clouds are still moving. I just loved how this came out through behind the clouds. So once again, the other one's a little more to the left. This one's more to the right. And I just love the side image of the sun bouncing and reflecting off of the clouds that evening, and just how colorful it was. And this is one of the last images that I took, and now I'm looking more to the left, straight west, as the sun's setting. And this, yeah, like I said, is near the end of the series. Not sure if that's a word, but you can see that this was taken at 8:29, almost 8:30. And while the sunbeams coming through are not that impressive, what I loved was, let's just call them teeth coming down from the clouds. I just liked how they were gapped. It looked like, I'm not sure what it looks like, but I just thought that that was really cool with those 4 or 5 impressions of the clouds coming down into the scene that I was at. As you can see, I'm out there on top of a dirt pile. And Charlie's not in this one. He was in a couple other ones. Like I said, the camera was set up and he was moving around. So there's actually a couple pictures that I have where Charlie's standing on the mound right in front of me. So if you remember the timestamp on frame 15, the last frame that I took out there was basically at 8:30. And as I was leaving the subdivision at their model home, they have this flagpole. And I just love, this is at normal speed. 23.98, And so I drove past this, and I was like, that would make a really cool picture here. And so this is a still photograph of that same flag that I took at 9:22. So Charlie and I left the subdivision, and I knew of two other flags in town closer to where I live. And so Charlie and I went over there, and they're about 5, 8 miles away. Got over there, and one of them, the flag is missing. And it was a huge flag. We're talking 20 feet by 30 feet. And so later on, I asked Lovely Bride where it went, and she said that that business closed down and they don't have it anymore. And then the one other flag that I found was just limp on the pole. So Charlie and I drove 8 miles back out there to that Victory Ranch place, and I found a place to park. And Charlie is like, "You go do your stuff. I'm sitting in the car." So it was kind of funny. He literally looked out the door watching me take the video and pictures.
By the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
So the next couple images are some nighttime street photography Charlie and I went out on May 8th to capture. And once again, I'm still working on a slow shutter speed. And this was a bush that we passed by, and I tried to capture it. But then Charlie really started acting goofy down there on the ground, once again trying to chew my leash. And so I videoed him instead. So here is one of two examples of some nightscape street scenes. This is out front of our subdivision, and it was a nice clear night, and the moon was coming up pretty bright later on, thus no Astro for this night. But you can see the stars out there on the horizon, and Charlie did pretty good. So this is 9:15. We finished our walk, got over there, sat there for almost an hour and a half. I was doing some daytime fast panning, slow panning, just figuring out what it is. And then, so there's an intersection probably about 500 feet off to our left, and then there's another one 1,000 feet down. So it was interesting because a lot of people would stop at both of them, but then when I looked, it's like, where'd the cars go? Sometimes they were turning right into our subdivision, and other times they all, I don't know. But it took a while to get a sequence of more than 2 or 3 cars to come through the scene. So here's another attempt. I'm using the Canon R5 at this time with the 28-70, and so I was playing at 35, 50, playing a couple at 70. 70s just didn't work, and this was all handheld. So some of the slower shutter speeds, you can see a little bit of jerkiness in there. But this is a sequence of what is this? Oh, this was 4 different cars heading from my left going to the right. And this time, none of them were pulling into the subdivision. There's been a couple before this where there was a bright light right in front of me because the cars were already, they had their brake lights on and slowing down and getting ready to make a right turn into our subdivision. And while there's very few or no stars visible in this one, up in the upper left-hand corner at the 10 o'clock position, that's some light beams coming in from a street light in front of this lone house in front of this 300-acre field. And so I just loved how this image turned out. So far this roll of 24 for 4 through 10 May, Charlie and I have been pretty eclectic. We've been everywhere. We were out in western central Texas. Then we were out there doing some field photography of flowers, landscapes, did some nighttime street photography, captured some lights in the pool. And now here on May 9th, it's just almost 1 o'clock. Got a late start, but we're in the, I'm not going to call it a jungle forest, but we're walking upriver from the Chalk Falls waterfall out there near Stillhouse Lake. This is positioned below the dam. And so I found these ferns and finally tied off and convinced Charlie to sit down and relax because some of the ferns were destroyed because he decided to get his leash wrapped around them. But I just really liked how these ferns looked with the shadows on one side and the bright light on the other. And then here's the second of two images of these ferns. After the first one, I took a couple pictures, and then I checked the back of the camera, and I saw that the left side was kind of really overexposed and really hard to get back any of the color because it's a little washed out there. So this one was over here on the right-hand side of those, more in shadows. But I did love how the light was speckling through the above canopy and shining on these ferns in here. And once again, it's very small gap area that I was able to capture this because now you can see on the right hand side it's kind of bright coming through, but it's very interesting. So the brown down there in the lower right hand side down there at 4 or 5 o'clock, that's actually part of the stream bed, and Charlie was sitting behind me in half of his body. He enjoys laying in the stream, but that's what he was doing. He was laying in the stream while I was trying to frame up this photograph of the fern. So it was a pretty long walk up this stream bed, and as we were walking up, not a whole lot to really capture, just a lot of rocks, and then we came around a bend and climbed over a dead tree, and it was just really interesting. This water was coming out of this, I'm going to call it a cave entrance. Not very big, maybe 3 or 4 feet. At my age, I'm not climbing in it. If I had found this when I was younger, I'm sure I would have gone in and explored it more in depth. But not today. And so after capturing the video, because I am learning to capture the video first, picture second, because by the time I finish setting everything up and taking all the pictures and mission complete, kind of exhausted and want to move on to the next scene. But like I said, though, Charlie and I came around a bend coming upstream. It was really wide, maybe 30 feet wide, and it was just all rocks. And then we came around this bend and we saw this. And this was only maybe 15 feet on each side where it had all of this colorful ferns and foliage, and the water was coming out. So I set this up. These are all handheld. I did not have a tripod out there, so I shot this at 1/6, which was kind of a challenge because Charlie was trying to move around even after I tied him off. And in the next photo, we're going to see what happens when Charlie doesn't want to behave and sit still. But I just loved how this turned out in the end up here in the valley. So in photography, when we intentionally move a camera in order to get a cool effect, it's called ICM, intentional camera movement. Well, this was not intentional camera movement. Somehow, after I tied Charlie off to a fallen down tree that was pretty thick, not sure, I guess I was too focused on taking the pictures, but his leash, his rope part got around one of my legs. And so here I am, I'm set up at this slow shutter speed, focused on what I want to take a picture of. And then all of a sudden some people were coming downstream, and all of a sudden Charlie decided to not just sit up, but he wanted to move out and go greet them. So needless to say, I'm holding the camera, and he gives a nice tug on his leash. It's around my foot, and so he pulls it sideways about 6 inches, and this is the result. And as I mentioned in the intro, for the last 4 or 5 weeks, either the full moon has limited or prohibited me from taking interstellar object pictures from my backyard. And so on this night, which was the 10th, so it's the morning, so we got back on the 9th and set up the telescope that night because it's now 1:06 a.m. on the 10th. And this is NGC 4565, also known as the Needle Galaxy. I thought it was pretty cool. It's supposed to be 35 to 50 million light years away from the planet Earth. and I'm going to try and say this. It's supposed to be in the constellation Coma Berniceus. I'm not sure if I said that right at all. Anyway, so I set this up on the C-Star S50, and as you can see, I took 1,085 images at 10-second intervals and stacked them within the program. So just like a regular roll of camera, I ended up winding it up and sending it to processing before I actually shot all 24. The interstellar picture of the Needle Galaxy was image 23. So kind of got shortchanged by one image this week. Though I hope you enjoyed this roll of 24 for the week of 4 to 10 May 2026. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's roll of 24. Once again, it was very eclectic, from sunsets to flowers in motion with my pixie dust. I thought that was pretty interesting. And to the ferns out there along the riverbed. So, if you enjoyed this episode of Roll of 24, please consider subscribing and hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it. See y'all again next Wednesday. Bye.